What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Student Hine Show. Today is May 15th, 2021, and on today's episode, I have special guest Mike from the Warzone Sports Network. How you doing today, Mike?
What's up, man? I'm happy to be here.
Excited that I could have you on and everything. Not had an episode in quite some time, probably a week and a half to 2 weeks. Been out of town. There's been lots of topics. Like Julio Jones being traded and everything like that, some WWE news, the NBA playoffs, and so much more. Before we kind of, talk about all those, top sports topics, can you kind of tell some of the listeners, about yourself and the Warzone Sports Network and the podcast you have?
What's up, everyone? My name is Sean Michaels, also known as Mike on the Mike Sports. You can find me at Mike on the Mike Sports for my personal stuff across the board, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and everything in between. But the main thing that I want everyone to go and check out is the Warzone Sports Network. My friend Joe Morley was on a couple weeks ago, or I should say my friend and me, Joe Morley, was on a couple weeks ago promoting the Warzone Sports Network. We got something good going on over there. We are now up to 6 weekly shows plus 3 live streams a week. Sometimes we get a 4th or a 5th live stream in there each week. So, we're talking about daily content over there for you guys to enjoy. We're starting to become the fan experience. So we're kind of just bringing in all the comments, bringing in the live chat, and sharing everyone's opinions with the world. That's kind of our goal, to get a network for the fan, not for, the big ESPN network and stuff like that you see.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. You start off the Warzone Sports Network, like you mentioned. Joe Morley was on here about a week or two ago. We were talking about as well. I really like, you're talking about something different than ESPN, because honestly, I hate ESPN. It seems like it's just biased to a couple of teams in each sport. And, you kind of talked about before we started, that NFL mock draft video you all did. That was amazing. You all had Ian Rappaport, current NFL players. You had some, wrestling guys. You had some people work at NFL Network. That was just so awesome. Definitely one of the coolest NFL draft videos I've seen, not just, recently, probably all the time. So you all, whoever's watching, make sure to go check that out. It was really, really cool. So, kind of start off here. Like I said, we've not had episode in about a week and a half. So some of these topics are kind of from last week. But, to me, like the biggest storyline of all the things that's happened the past week or so was Julio Jones being traded to the Tennessee Titans. Julio was traded for a 2nd-round pick this year and a 4th-round pick next year. A 2nd in 2022 and a 4th in 2023. And in return, the Titans got Julio and a 6th-round pick next year. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on this Julio Jones trade going to the Tennessee Titans?
I got mixed feelings. I'm really a defensive guy. I played defense when I was coming through as a football player, playing overseas and playing in high school. But I'm a defensive guy. So I'm more interested in the storyline of defenses like the Colts having to go against this offense twice a year. That's going to be a ton of fun to watch, and it's really going to be a chess match because defenses have to choose. Do you want to take your chances with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown in most of the time single coverage or single zone coverage and then try and stop Derrick Henry? Or do you want to try and cover those guys up so they don't get the big plays necessarily, but now you're putting yourself vulnerable to that run game with Derrick Henry and with this offensive line, which I think we can agree is at least average. I would say slightly above average to good almost. Good enough when you got a running back like Henry and a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill. So I'm interested to see how the defenses are going to adjust more than how the Titans offense is going to do, because it's just going to be a constant game of who do you want to let get the ball. Who do you think getting the ball gives you the best chance of winning? Putting the ball in Ryan Tannehill's hands is probably the way I would go. Not that I think Ryan Tannehill's horrible. I just know how easy it is for Derrick Henry to get going and start running people over when he gets into the secondary and safeties are trying to bring him down.
Yeah, A.J. Brown had kind of like a recruiting video on TikTok trying to get, Julio Jones to come to Tennessee. That ended up happening. Honestly, I was really hoping Julio would go to a team that was a much more better case to be in a Super Bowl contention. I really, really, really wanted to see Julio get traded to the Patriots for Stephon Gilmore. I made a video about it. I thought it made so much sense. Obviously it did not happen. But I am kind of glad Julio did not get traded to the Baltimore Ravens, being a big Bengals fan. But, even if Julio went to the Ravens, I still don't think, they were ever going to be a pass-first team in Baltimore. But this trade to me is very interesting because you have Derrick Henry, who's arguably the best running back in the NFL, A.J. Brown, who right now is easily one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. Julio Jones is a first-ballot Hall of Famer. He's had 1,000-yard seasons 7 out of the last 8 years. And that 1 year he did not have 1,000 yards was actually last season, but he played less than 10 games. He was well on pace for over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Tannehill, to me, is kind of the concern. I know, he's good. He's much better than he was in Miami, but I don't know if he can lead their team, maybe to a Super Bowl. And, the defense with Tennessee is really a big issue. I believe they were last in the NFL in sacks last season. They lost to Jadeveon Clowney. I know he did not have a single sack last season with Tennessee, but that's still a big contributor on defense that they're losing. But Julio, to me, to Tennessee, it's very interesting. It's not something I thought would have happened, but I'm really excited to see, how the Titans play, this upcoming season, especially in the AFC South. I do not think that is a gimme in the AFC South at all. I'm very, very, very high on the Colts this season. I know lots of people are saying, maybe the Titans are Super Bowl contenders. I don't really understand it at all. But do you think the Titans are Super Bowl contenders after this, Julio Jones trade?
Well, we know the offense is going to be elite now. And it already was one of the better offenses in the NFL. When you really go and look at it, they were, I think, the most efficient offense, or right up there at the top of the charts. It all comes down to the defense. Like you're saying, they brought in Caleb Farley. We're hoping that he can stay healthy and be a CB1 for them for years to come. They brought in Bud Dupree. Do I think Bud Dupree is an elite pass rusher? No. Do I think he moves the needle a little bit? Do I think he can fill Jadeveon Clowney's shoes? Yeah, I think he can. But the problem is the defense was bad. The defense wasn't even good. The defense was bad. They need to get to a point where they're around 15, in between like 12 and 15 ranked in the NFL. Be that average level defense and let the offense be superhuman. That's what you see going on in Kansas City. They're okay with having an average defense because they know they're going to score 30-plus points every single game. The Titans can go down that road and be a contender with the Chiefs and play a similar style, but that defense has to get up out of that 25th ranked in the league level. I don't know what they actually were, but I know it's around there. They got to get up into that top 15. They got to get up to just at least an average or a slightly above average play from them. Does Bud Dupree and Caleb Farley do that? I don't think so. So I'm kind of easing up on the Titans going to the Super Bowl right away. But over the next couple of years, we could see them add some pieces and become contenders for a Super Bowl with this offense now. They don't got to do anything else to the offense other than maintain the O-line for the next couple seasons.
I was telling somebody actually last night, in the NFL, it seems like now in today's NFL, if you have a good, really good offense, you can just have an average defense and you're a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
It seems like now in today's NFL, if you have a great defense and an okay offense, that's not going to get you to a Super Bowl very often. And, look at the Buccaneers. They had an elite offense last season, but they also had an elite defense. That's part of the reason why, they humiliated the Chiefs' offensive line and why the Chiefs were just unable to keep up with the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But to me, with Julio, he's still a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. He is absolutely phenomenal. But I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders. Honestly, if I had to pick right now, I'm not even picking them to win the AFC South. I just really, really, really like the Colts. Wentz, to me, I know I sound crazy. I think he's a dark horse for the MVP candidate. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but I really, really am expecting a good year for him. Michael Pittman's coming back from an injury. T.Y. Hilton's not what he used to be, but he's still a reliable wide receiver. You have Jonathan Taylor, had a really nice year last year. Darius Leonard's one of the best linebackers in the NFL, at least top 5. They have a tremendous offensive line, but they have a great offense. Well, I would say more so a good offense and a good defense. The Titans have a good offense, but that defense, we're talking about is just, you don't know what you're going to expect. So I would probably say right now, the Titans are going to be in the playoffs, at least as a wild card team, but I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders, and I really don't think, as of right now, they're even going to end up winning their division.
Yeah, it's tough. The Colts are a really balanced team. They don't have any superstar X Factor players, but they got a bunch of really good players at every single position across the board. They might have been interested in grabbing Julio just to keep him away from Tennessee if they really wanted to. I didn't think they would, just because they already made some trades this offseason, getting Carson Wentz, obviously, and other moves that they've made. But the Colts are going to be a really well-balanced team. It really is all dependent on if Carson Wentz can get back to form or not. If he can get back to form and play better than Phillip Rivers, they're going to win the same amount of games or more this year. And they were good last year with Phillip Rivers, kind of throwing his last throw on that right shoulder. So I think they can be okay. And I think that the Colts can definitely win the division, and it's going to be a tight race between these two teams, Titans and Colts. I would probably also lean Colts as of right this second, but I haven't looked at their schedules yet. So I got to really sit down and look at their schedules.
We kind of talked about, you said you're a big Chargers fan, and, you had the chance to watch, Phillip Rivers throughout his career. Mm-hmm. And to me, you take Phillip Rivers, just an average year of his career, just average. Last season, the Colts were 100% Super Bowl contenders. Phillip Rivers, that was the last year of his season. He was not really good at all. You really saw it in, that final throw he had, that Hail Mary throw. Mm-hmm. I still do not get why, did not put in Jacoby Brissett in that play. Thought it made so much more sense. But Rivers, just being average, they were Super Bowl contenders. Now you have Carson Wentz, who I believe is a significant upgrade compared to Phillip Rivers from last season. I'm really interested to see how the Colts and Titans play out. And you mentioned, the Colts trading for Julio. I was really kind of hoping that would happen.
It'd be awesome.
Honestly, I still think it's possible the Colts trade for a top target. Would not be surprised one bit if the Colts are in contention or in play to maybe trade for Zach Ertz. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. They really need some tight ends. Pair him back with Carson Wentz. Just giving him more weapons because, if you're concerned about a quarterback in his play, the top things to do is get him protection. And if he already has that, which Wentz does, is get him more targets. And I think that would be a great spot for Zach Ertz. And I really think that would even make the Colts even more Super Bowl contenders and even giving them a more threat to the AFC South in the division.
I could see it. Yeah, I got Ertz going to the Chargers or the Colts. One of those two. We'll see what happens.
So kind of switching gears here. Well, completely switching gears here. We're talking about Julio Jones being traded to the Tennessee Titans. We kind of talked about before, the WWE, they had some major releases, this past week or so. Some of the releases include Lana. She is married to, with Rusev, who was in WWE, now in AEW. Braun Strowman, Buddy Murphy, and Aleister Black. What are your kind of thoughts on all these releases in WWE recently?
Yeah, I haven't been following WWE as tightly as I did in my teenage years, but I still kind of follow what's going on as far as storylines and everything, so that way I can watch WrestleMania and hopefully go to WrestleMania because it is going to be in LA, I think, here pretty soon, either this year or the next year. But anyways, yeah, the releases are interesting. I was listening to a podcast, an actual wrestling podcast, while I was at the gym the other day, and they were saying that Vince is realizing that he's in some bad contracts, and a lot of advisors are having him drop these bad contracts that they've signed, like Braun Strowman, who had a really big contract for his age. So when they get in these windows, they're starting to drop people, which is very interesting. It shows that they're going a different direction and that they want to start trying to save money, which to me makes me think that they're a little bit worried about AEW.
Some of these releases to me just make absolutely no sense at all. AEW, their ratings the past month or so have been absolutely horrendous, but at the same time, WWE is helping AEW with these signings. You're acting, we can save money by releasing Braun Strowman. We can save money by, releasing Samoa Joe. But it was announced yesterday Samoa Joe actually re-signed with WWE. But it's like you're getting rid of these guys to save money, but you're helping AEW because, some of these guys are at least going to sign with AEW. Lana, she probably is. Strowman, lots of people have mixed feelings about him going to AEW, but to me, this just does not make any sense at all. Strowman less than a month ago was in a WWE title match in a pay-per-view. 2 weeks later, he's fired. Nobody expected this to happen. I'm not really a big fan of Strowman much. I really don't know much about Buddy Murphy, but I know he was in that Mysterio feud with Mysterio's daughter or something like that. That completely just fell off the face of the earth, it seems like. They not talked about that much at all. Aleister Black, they had big plans for him, it seems like. Then he's fired. Lana, she's not really a good wrestler, but she's improved drastically over the past several years. They had the past year, ever since it seems like the pandemic started, they've had just so many releases that just makes absolutely no sense. I don't even understand why you would even take a chance on letting Samoa Joe sign back with Impact or going to AEW.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I really like AEW. It's, I actually have my Jericho shirt on right now. Cool. But the WWE, it's just not what it used to be. but I don't know. I don't think AEW would be a significant threat to the WWE. But if there's more releases like this, I mean, it's more of a possibility than it really actually is. I think AEW honestly is actually a little bit overrated. I like it a lot. I think it's much better than the WWE product it is right now. But, AEW does not get like the views and stuff near as much as it really, people would expect it to be. But with these releases, it really makes no sense. And WWE is hurting themselves by releasing these stars who have potential to be superstars. And they're hurting themselves even more by taking chance on some of these guys signing with AEW.
Here's a cheers to a little bit of the bubbly to Chris Jericho. In my opinion, one of the greats to ever do it. And I think that he's a lot higher ranked than most people probably would rank him. But yeah, and I'm hearing you, and that's what makes me think that it's got to be purely financial. And I didn't know that they re-signed Samoa Joe. I thought he was still kind of on the market to show up anywhere. So hearing that makes me think maybe they are going to just restructure some of these contracts. Maybe you're going to see Braun Strowman news re-signing with them in a couple weeks, or Aleister Black. That one doesn't make any sense either. It's not like he's old. He's a young guy. He's coming up. You know what I mean? So I don't understand that one at all. The Braun Strowman one doesn't make sense either, but at least you can be like, he's kind of old. We did a lot with him already. Like there's some kind of sense to it, but I still don't see why they would do it other than financial reasons.
Yeah, I believe Strowman was projected, this upcoming, it was final year of his contract was $1.2 million or something like that, which honestly, that is high, but I actually thought it'd be a little bit higher than that.
It doesn't seem that bad for a draw like him with his size and everything. And the way he's gotten into shape and become a wrestler more than just a big man to stand there and yell and chokeslam somebody.
Exactly. Like I honestly thought it'd be a little bit higher. And I was also reading the article. I believe Strowman is actually 35 or 37.
Yeah.
That's actually a lot older than I thought he was.
Yeah, me too.
But, it's really interesting with WWE, with AEW. I mean, I do not think it's ever going to be, like it was years ago with the WWE, Attitude Era and everything like that. But you kind of talked about Jericho, being one of the all-time greats. I've watched wrestling since 2014. To me, I didn't watch, with The Rock and, all those guys because I'm only like 20 years old. I've only been watching 6 or 7 years. I would say Jericho is the greatest of all time. I know it's really debatable, but you look at everything Jericho's done. I could talk about this just forever, just in the fact this past 4 or 5 years. I mean, the guy's 50, and without Jericho, I don't think it's debatable. There's no AEW. Tony Khan even said without Jericho and Kenny Omega, there is no AEW, and they had that match at Wrestle Kingdom several years ago in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But I just think if Jericho stays with AEW, I believe his contract ends within a year or so. If I'm AEW, I feel a lot more secure and more feel more. I don't know the word, like happy or relaxed at the fact we have that one star and we can always rely on him. But at the same time, he did turn 50 in November. If they lose Jericho and if they lose, I don't think they'll ever lose Omega. But if they lose Jericho, if I'm AEW, then I would be extremely, extremely concerned because, even if the feuds are crappy in AEW, you still have Jericho to rely on.
Yeah.
So to me, if AEW, I don't think it's really a competition that much to WWE. But if they lose Jericho, in my opinion, I think AEW is in some deep crap.
Yeah, Jericho is a true artist, man. I would like to see him take up acting and stuff like we're seeing some of these guys doing. I know he probably wouldn't be able to play the roles of these muscleheads like The Rock and John Cena are starting to do, but I definitely think that he could be someone that could play any kind of character because throughout his years in WWE, he is one of the guys that has shifted from character to character with no kind of like hiccups at all. He's gone from, the Y2J with the sparkly jacket or even WCW Chris Jericho into a short hair, more fit, more modern Chris Jericho into the stuff that he's doing today. He did some goofy stuff. Like no matter what is thrown at him as a wrestler or as a character, he makes it work and usually makes it the best thing going on in whatever company and whatever's going on TV during that time period. CM Punk and Chris Jericho's feud is one of my favorite of all time. And I think it's one of the most underrated of all time. Those guys did a good job together. So I'm a huge Chris Jericho fan, man. And I'm right there with you with putting him in the top 3 and debating that he's the best ever.
I mean, you look at, like you said, Y2J, the list of Jericho. I mean, and then you have like the demo guide here. And to me, I don't know if it'd be a feud or storyline. My all-time favorite, storyline, not just in AW or WWE, but just ever, is definitely, the list of Jericho, when Jericho was with Kevin Owens. I mean, it was entertaining, but the fact that he's able to reinvent himself when he's 50 years old. You look at The Rock. The Rock has not wrestled on a consistent basis for about 12 years now, 10, 12 years. And he's always kind of stayed that same guy for the most part. Jericho, well, it's time for a new character. You don't really know what you want to expect. Yep. All of a sudden, it's the hottest character, in sports entertainment, wrestling. It's just really crazy, how he's able to reinvent himself throughout the years, despite his age. And you kind of mentioned The Rock and John Cena in movies. I saw an interview earlier today. Chris Van Vliet, he's one of the top wrestling interviewers. He's a guy kind of, watch and trying to, mimic my, channel after. He's really, really good. He's worked, I think, for AW and a little stuff like that. We actually interviewed Cena. Cena, I believe, is set to return next month on SmackDown. And to me, the ratings on the WWE are at all-time low. I don't know if it makes sense, but if you're WWE, do you pull the trigger and turn John Cena heel when he returns?
Oh my gosh, please do. I just want to see what he does with it because I know he can be really good with it. People also hate on Cena, but that's kind of what he fed into after some time. Like, the kids are going to love me, the ladies are going to love me, and the men are going to hate me. And I'm okay with that. It's a part of his character. He's still going to go by his hustle, loyalty, and respect code, no matter what the fans say to him. To see him finally break and do like a Hulk Hogan little heel run would be so much fun. And I think that would put a stamp on his career that the WWE doesn't realize that he needs to end it and go into acting. The Rock did it too. He went heel right before he left.
Yeah, to me, at least Eva Marie is back. That's not really something to be good about if you're WWE. That's honestly one of the worst wrestlers in all of sports entertainment. But to me, we kind of talked about Jericho. He's one of the all-time greatest in wrestling. Cena's right up there with him. To me, I mean, Cena and Jericho are right beside each other. You can debate, maybe one is one, the other one is number 2. I don't know if Cena should turn heel. If he does, I think you have to turn him into the Dr. Thugonomics. I absolutely love that character so much. He had that kind of one-time thing at WrestleMania several years ago. I cannot remember who it was against, but you really look at him. But Cena turning heel, I think that's going to get viewership up. But if you do it, you can't just have him be on TV for a month and do it. I think if you're going to turn Cena heel, he has to be on TV on a weekly basis for at least around a year. Because let's turn Cena heel, let's have him have one feud, then he's off TV for a year. Like, that to me just makes no sense. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. You can't just. You got to go big or go home in that aspect. I would really like to see Cena turn heel. I mean, a heel Cena against a kind of a heel Roman Reigns feud. Reigns and Cena was one of my favorite feuds.
Yeah,
WWE, I believe it was in 2017.
Somewhere around there.
I would love to see maybe a heel Cena and a heel Reigns possible storyline.
Dude, they could feed into it too, because during that time when they're having that feud, Cena famously making fun of the promo thing on his wrist and everything. And he did that for The Rock too. He's done that a few times where he's called people out and been like, "Oh, your promo kind of stinks, bro," right there in front of everyone. Like, Cena kind of teased heel turn in that feud a little bit. He teased it a little bit. He's like, "I'm gonna break the fourth wall. We're gonna go after Roman Reigns," kind of a more aggressive approach at it in the promos. So that would be a fun feud if they could do it. Turn Cena heel, have him feud with a babyface for 3 or 4 months, and then get ready for one of the big events with Roman Reigns versus Cena. That'll be fun.
Maybe Cena against Reigns, depending how long Cena's with WWE, maybe WrestleMania. I don't know if he'll be there that long.
Yeah.
But maybe Survivor Series, in November. I think that makes a lot more possible sense. But I would really like to see Cena turn heel. It'll be really interesting to see, how that plays out with him returning to weekly WWE TV next month. And kind of switching gears to the NBA. I'm not really a huge guy at the NBA like I used to be, but the Celtics. Brad Stevens is out as the head coach at the Celtics. He replaces Danny Ainge as the GM. What are your thoughts, kind of, on this whole situation in Boston?
The writing's kind of on the wall for those guys. They did a brilliant job acquiring all those picks and getting the guys they got, but they didn't really kind of finish the job, as you would say. They didn't finish building a championship roster. They built a competitive roster. They took the Celtics from non-competitive to being a competitive roster, but they did not build that championship level roster. And after this year's failure, and it sucks for guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because I love those guys. They're absolute ballers. Now there's got to be some kind of change. Now this is weird. Brad Stevens going up to – have we ever seen this? I don't know if I've ever seen this before. The head coach going to GM and the GM calling it quits. That's weird to me. I don't know what they're going to do as far as hiring a head coach, but I hope Brad Stevens doesn't find a head coach that's equivalent to what he did. I hope they go and try and find a big name and bring someone in. I don't have any huge names in mind. I know Jason Kidd's talked about coming back to coaching. We'll see if he could possibly be the guy, but we'll see what happens in Boston. I just hope Brad Stevens as a GM just doesn't continue on what was going on before.
Being a big Celtics fan, I like the Celtics and I like the Cavs, but I like the Celtics a little bit more. I had no idea how to process this. I'm waking up, I was kind of done as Stevens this past season. Mm-hmm. I wanted him gone. I wake up, in the day, I see this crap happening. I didn't know how, I had no words to say. I was just absolutely shocked. Because, honestly, Danny Ainge has been, a pretty decent GM for the Celtics. But, honestly, not being biased, which I try to not be biased when it comes to teams I like, Danny Ainge has been severely overrated for the past several seasons. Every single season, they're in the top, trade market. Oh, maybe they'll get Jimmy Butler or Anthony Davis or DeMarcus Cousins in his prime or whoever. They traded to get Evan Fournier, who's a free agent. They traded to get an all-star type of talent who's a free agent at the end of his contract. Now you're going to have to give him, close to a max deal. Already having Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on a max deal. But to me, this was just shocking. I just really still do not know, how to – I have just mixed feelings about it. I'm not totally against it. I'm not totally for it. Being a big Celtics fan is just really – crazy. I hope Stevens, does a good job. I think he will do better than Ainge because the last several years, Ainge has just not done much of nothing. Yeah. But, really take away the Kyrie trade. They have not had any huge trades. They got lucky with the Isaiah Thomas trade, trading a second-round pick and Marcus Thornton, who's a nobody, and, Thomas turning into one of the best scorers, the following seasons. But I'm really interested, to see how Stevens plays out as GM. I'm even more interested who's the next head coach the Celtics would be. You kind of mentioned Jason Kidd. Are there any, people you're looking at, who should maybe be in contention for the Celtics next head coach?
No one in specifics, man. Honestly, I'm not as big on the NBA as everyone else is, but I just know the big names that have been floating around like Kidd and like some of the other guys. We saw Steve Nash just go to the Nets, so it could be a former player. Possibly, but to talk about their revolving door at the point guard position, they need to go get a big man. Go get a big man. That's what you need to do. Whether you do it in the draft a guy like the Suns did with Ayton, or whether you go and trade for an already established star, they need to go get a big man. We went from Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker. Yes, you can get a great guard. That does not mean he's going to be able to go down and help get rebounds. We see Tristan Thompson out there run around like a chicken with his head cut off when we saw Robert Williams go down in the playing games and in the playoffs. They need to go get a big man before they even look at coaches, in my opinion.
Years ago, I was so excited when it happened. They signed Al Horford.
Yeah.
That was a major, major bust signing. I don't think anybody expected that to be that bad. Same thing could be said with Gordon Hayward.
Yep.
It's just crazy how, underachieving the Celtics were. They had, Hayward, Tatum, Brown, Kyrie, Horford, Marcus Smart, all on the same team. Didn't even make the NBA Finals. That's just embarrassing. But, kind of talking about the next head coach, you mentioned Jason Kidd, possibly being a front runner. I believe Chauncey Billups, he's with the Clippers, but he's also one of the top front runners. You kind of mentioned a former guy, maybe a former player. To me, the top choice is obvious, and it's not being talked about at all. Kevin McHale. He's a Celtics legend. He's an NBA Hall of Famer. His first 5 full seasons as a head coach, he improved his record every single season. He was fired with the Rockets his final season, despite, they started 4-7 the first 11 games of the season. To me, I think it's way too early to fire somebody. Kevin McHale knows like the Celtics way. He knows the Celtics, history and everything. It makes so much sense. I think I'd much rather have Kevin McHale, a guy who's not coached in the NBA for 5 or 6 years, than Jason Kidd. I think Jason Kidd is extremely overrated. I think Kevin McHale was one of the more underrated coaches when he was in the NBA, easily. I think Kevin McHale is the top choice for the Celtics, and I think that's definitely the smartest idea they could possibly make for the next head coach.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I like that pick a lot. I didn't even think about him, honestly.
So kind of talking, staying on the NBA side, talking about the NBA playoffs, there is, the Suns swept the Nuggets, the Jazz and the Clippers are tied at 2, the Bucks and the Nets are tied at 2, and the Hawks and the 76ers are tied at 2. So far, throughout this, rounds of the NBA playoffs, is there anything, that was kind of surprised you at all in the playoffs?
I mean, obviously the Lakers going down the way they did, injuries kind of killing it. We're seeing the Nets suffer some injuries now. So the real takeaway about the 2021 NBA playoffs, like the 2021s, anyone can take this thing right now. Really. You could really make an argument for anyone to take it. I have a Clippers-Nets final set up here just because I like the way the Clippers play when they're on. When they're off, yeah, they play horrible and they lose games. But when they're on, you see what you've seen in the past 2 games. You see what you saw in Game 7 against Dallas. They can be as good as any team in the NBA. So we'll see how that goes down. It really depends on the Nets injury situation. If they can somehow get through this series and then get into the next one and get Harden or Kyrie or both back, then they're back on track to go into the finals. But yeah, the storyline for me is, and what's making it a little bit more exciting than in most years, anybody can win the NBA finals this year. We could see a Phoenix Suns holding the trophy. We could see the Philadelphia 76ers holding the trophy. We could see the Jazz holding the trophy if they can put it together and put the Clippers down. Anyone can honestly win it this year. That's what's exciting about it.
Yeah, the injury aspect, of this playoffs just makes it so more interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say, entertaining because you don't like to see players get hurt, but, it makes it a lot more, interesting to watch, who's going to pull off, the win, with players are being injured. You look at the Celtics, Jaylen Brown did not play all the Celtics through in the playoffs. Anthony Davis was hurt for the Lakers. Who knows if they win that series, if Davis plays, the full series. I think that's, very a topic for discussion. Kyrie being injured, for the Nets. It's just really crazy with all the injuries. I'm not taking, anything away from Kyrie. The thing I hate about the NBA now is it's so much softer than it was in the 80s and 90s. I saw something the other day, and it was very, very interesting. The same injury that Kyrie currently has, that everybody's talking about, when he's able to return and everything like that. Isaiah Thomas, to me, one of the most underrated point guards of all time. And I know it sounds kind of crazy considering he's one of the best point guards of all time, had the same exact injury as Kyrie Irving did in the finals. He scored 25 points in a quarter in the finals in the same exact injury as Kyrie Irving. It's just really crazy to me. I'm not taking anything away from Kyrie's injury. I hope he's fine and everything. It just is insane how soft the NBA has become from the 80s to what it is now, it seems like.
I'm with you. And this year also kind of got thrown for a loop because they had such a short offseason. I don't think that it's a coincidence that you have a much shorter offseason and you're seeing a lot of guys that are injury prone. You're seeing them late in this season starting to fall to injuries as well. Even LeBron James got hurt this season with the ankle injury. But guys like Anthony Davis, like you said, Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, just guys late in the season getting hurt because they didn't get the full offseason to let their body heal from the previous season. Also you got to bring up the point when you're talking about the 90s, the painkillers administered back then are probably a little different than the painkillers that are allowed to be administered now.
Maybe just a
Isaiah Thomas knew he scored 25 points in that first quarter.
Probably not. But Speaking of injuries, somebody else who's been hurt actually in the playoffs was Chris Paul. He was hurt some in the Lakers series, and Phoenix wasn't sure how much Chris Paul was going to play. To me, that's definitely the surprise team throughout this playoffs. They swept the Nuggets and MVP, Jokic. That is just insane. I would really like to see the Suns win heading into the playoffs. I was just because I knew the Celtics didn't have a chance, even with Jaylen Brown being injured. I didn't care who it was. I just did not want it to be the Lakers. And I know you're wearing the Lakers hat, but Celtics Lakers rivalry and everything. But I kind of want to see the Suns win it because to me, I mentioned I'm a Bengals fan. I think it's really relatable. The Suns have sucked for years and years and years, and the Bengals have sucked for years and years and years. And the Suns, nobody expected this to happen. I mean, they're easily so far to me the best team in the playoffs. I don't know if they can beat a healthy Nets team. I think it's possible, but I'm really interested, in this Suns team. They are very surprising. I mean, Chris Paul to me is really showing he's definitely one of the best point guards of all time. I saw a stat. I don't remember what it was. Each time he's left to go to a new team, that team's winning percentage has increased drastically. They've made a huge, jump in the playoffs. The Suns haven't been in the playoffs in over a decade. They're number 2 seed and look like the best team in the whole NBA right now. Devin Booker is playing out of his mind. Honestly, I think he's been actually underrated because people are talking about Chris Paul so much with the injury and how much he's meant to Phoenix.
Yeah.
I think I know the last episode I said I had the Lakers beating I had the Nets beating the Lakers. Obviously with the Lakers being out, I would say my finals prediction right now would probably be the Nets and the Suns. I'm going to take the Nets in 7 games, but to me, a healthy Nets team, just getting Kyrie or Harden back. I mean, you don't need 3. I think though the Nets and the Suns, to me right now, are the biggest threats in the playoffs, and I think realistically, that's probably going to be the matchup we see in the finals.
Yeah, I've been a Suns doubter. That's more because Joe Morley is the only person that I've ever heard give the Suns credit before they were good. So that was pretty insane that he kind of called that. It was a little bit of a shot in the dark. He just looked at what they did last year with the 8-0 in the bubble and said, hey, I'm going to take a shot on going ahead and giving the Suns some praise here before the season even started. And he called them going to the finals, which is absolutely ridiculous, Joe. And in that moment, I face-palmed. I freaked out. I was like, what are you saying? Well, look who looks dumb now. So I'm kind of like, I want Chris Paul. I'm a big Chris Paul fan. Especially when he was in LA. Not that I root for the Clippers, but I like the players on the Clippers. Like I root for Kawhi, but I don't want the Clippers to succeed as a whole. But it's a weird dynamic. But anyway, same thing with Chris Paul when he was here. And now that he's in there, like I'm rooting for him, but I'm rooting against the Suns just because I do not want to hear it from Joe Morley for the next however many weeks after if they win the finals. Ayton is also balling. I took the Nuggets over the Suns in 5 games. And how that completely went wrong. My sole idea was that Ayton was really going to struggle covering an athlete the level of Jokic. But Ayton's establishing himself as his own form of athlete, a guy that can cover an Anthony Davis, that can cover a Nikola Jokic. Booker and Ayton have been game changers in the playoffs and in the regular season this year with Chris Paul kind of just leading the way. It's almost like a perfect storm coming together.
Somebody else, for the Suns, to me, he's not going to get you 20 points a game. Somebody I really, really like for Phoenix, him and Rondo are definitely my favorite players who are still in the playoffs, is Jay Crowder. He's a defensive guy. The thing I like about Crowder is, he's not afraid, to I don't really know how to describe it. Like if there's, a scuffle or something like that, not afraid to get into it, not afraid to be aggressive or, anything like that. I really, really like Crowder's play, especially in the final game against the Lakers. And I'm not trying to talk bad about, your favorite team, but, because like I said, I like the Cavs also, but since LeBron's went to LA, I cannot stand LeBron. Making fun of LeBron's commercial, doing a salsa dance. To me, I thought that was pretty funny. I know, Lakers fans probably did not think that was funny, but Crowder, I think seems like every single team, who goes to the finals has that one guy. If you take him away, he may not be that star, but if you take him away, he's actually a really big contributor. I think Crowder is one of the more underrated contributors to Phoenix. We kind of talked about the Suns, with their matchup, sweeping the Nuggets. Do you think Jokic winning the MVP and they get swept by Phoenix. Do you think the MVP should have went to Jokic, or do you think it should have went to maybe Chris Paul, or do you think the MVP should have been Jokic, or do you think maybe Chris Paul because they swept Denver in the playoffs?
This is where it's tough with the MVP thing. We as fans and we as NBA voters, or I don't know, what are they called? Voters, people that vote on the awards. They need to establish like a consistency. Are we going to include playoff play into the MVP conversation, or are we not? Because if we're not going to include it, then we should purely just look at the regular season. And in that case, yeah, it probably was Jokic. But if you include the playoffs and we get the MVP established after the NBA Finals, not that we call the NBA Finals MVP the league MVP, but in a tight race for the MVP, like can the playoffs elevate one person over the other? I think that it should, in my personal opinion, even if we do the award before the finals. So say we do it in that little tiny like 3-day gap we're going to have from the last game of the conference finals to the NBA Finals. Say we do the awards in there, and up to that point, like the playoffs are a part of this. So you're going to have your playoff numbers, you're going to have your regular season numbers. Your regular season numbers kind of qualify you as a finalist for the MVP, and the playoffs can elevate you above someone else. If we go that way, then we can start talking about Chris Paul. Even though he doesn't put up big numbers, he makes a big impact on the game. Like you were saying, Jay Crowder, a guy that Jay Crowder kind of mirrors to in the Eastern Conference right now is PJ Tucker on Kevin Durant. Jay Crowder wasn't stopping LeBron James, but he was annoying LeBron James, making it hard on LeBron James, and making LeBron James work for every single thing that he got in those games. So at the end of the games, you see LeBron can't even hardly stand up anymore. He's so tired. That's kind of what PJ Tucker is doing to Kevin Durant and against the Brooklyn Nets too. So yeah, those guys make that little bit of an impact. Same thing with Chris Paul. Maybe that impact should launch him into the MVP spot. It also would be cool to see Chris Paul win an MVP, but it also is cool to see a center win MVP.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. You mentioned center winning MVP. I believe that's the first center to win an MVP since Shaq.
Yep.
And you look at it. I think the NBA should kind of be like the NFL. Have the award ceremony just a day or so before the Super Bowl. I think it makes a lot more sense. But if we're going regular season, I do think it should be Jokic. But at the same time, you're looking at regular season, I still think Chris Paul is number 2 right behind Jokic. If we're looking at the playoffs, I would probably give it to Chris Paul because look at most valuable player. Like I said, the Suns were not in the playoffs for a decade. You get Chris Paul, they're number 2 seed and the best team in the NBA right now. That's not a coincidence. You have one of the best point guards of all time coming to your team and helping you significantly, making your team a threat to anybody in the NBA when for the past decade, I would say you're one of the biggest laughing stocks probably. And it's kind of like, I believe it was Steve Nash, years ago with Phoenix. His stats weren't that great, but I don't remember what year it was. I think it was the year that Kobe should have won it, but it was actually Steve Nash or something like that.
Yeah.
Nash's stats weren't great, but he was such a huge, vital piece and main factor for Phoenix that season. I think that case could kind of be the same thing for Chris Paul because it's meant so much to Phoenix in just the 1 year he's been with them. He's definitely up there. To me, though, I regular season, I would give it to Jokic. If we're talking about regular season and playoffs, but not including finals, I would probably have to give it to Chris Paul, despite, far less impressive stats. He just means so much to Phoenix, making them a, title contender. But really interesting to see.
They're 9-1. They're 9-1 in the playoffs right now. They're hot.
Yeah, it is crazy, the Phoenix Suns. I mean, you mentioned Joe Morley predicting this. And it's kind of like, to me, I'll predict things going into the season, but do I honestly think it? Not really. I think, I just predict it to see, am I going to be right? Probably not, but if I am right, I got the bragging rights with it. So, yeah, I've kind of had predictions like this, I'm not really lucked out on it. For example, heading into last season, this is really embarrassing take. I picked Drew Lock to win MVP. And I know it sounds super stupid, but and I also picked the Steelers to be last in AFC North. Obviously, that did not happen, but it's like there's a small chance of it happening. But if it does happen, I'm going to be pretty much the only person who even said it, type of deal. But that's pretty impressive prediction by Joe Morley so far. And I understand, you not wanting Phoenix to win the finals because I've had some debates with people like that. Just rooting against the team so that person, won't be right and everything. But kind of going on our last topic here, and we've talked a lot about the NBA, the Celtics, and the NBA playoffs. The cover of Madden actually comes out on Thursday. The teaser for Madden actually includes two GOATs. There's a teaser, posting about it on Twitter. And the last time there was two players on Madden was Troy Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald in 2010. So it appears there's going to be two players on the cover of Madden 22. So who do you think should be on the cover of Madden 22?
Who I think it's going to be, I think it's Brady and Mahomes. They're doing like the Super Bowl matchup Madden cover again, like we saw with Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald. When they do those dual covers, I like to see like a defensive player and an offensive player because you never really see the defensive players on the Madden cover. So it's cool to give them that little shout out, whoever it's going to be. But it's probably going to be Brady and Mahomes, I'm assuming, after that Super Bowl. I mean, it's one of the bigger Super Bowls ever. I know the Buccaneers absolutely dominated the whole thing. But that matchup of Mahomes versus Brady, that's something we're going to talk about for the rest of our lives. And let's just be honest about what happened when Brady and Mahomes met. We're going to talk about it for the rest of our lives because in 15 years, Mahomes is going to be in Brady's shoes, or it's going to be something like that. I don't think he's going to win 7 Super Bowls or however many Brady's going to retire with. But he's going to be in that little conversation like this guy's a top 10, like an Aaron Rodgers type situation. So I think Madden wants to capture that moment on the cover as well. I wanted to see Derrick Henry on the cover. I thought that would be cool. I think they could have made a really cool looking cover. And you got to cash in on running backs like him while they're still going off, because who knows, any year that could be it for him. Any year he could fall off that cliff. That's the way the running back position is. So I wanted to see him get in there while he's still there. I know Mahomes is going to have plenty of chances later. They can do a Legends edition with Brady any year that they want, even while he's still freaking playing if they want to.
You mentioned, Brady and Mahomes, with the Super Bowl matchup we're going to talk about for years. And, we've talked about the NBA. This is very similar to me. A matchup we never got to see was Kobe against LeBron in the finals. We were able to see, that in the finals. That's something, obviously, that's going to be in the cover of 2K. That's a series we would still be talking about, similar to this Buccaneers and Chiefs Super Bowl. Despite the score not being what many people expected, it's still going to be talked about because it's, two legends and when it's all said and done, two of the best quarterbacks ever. Mm-hmm. But, originally this was actually, I believe, going to be Aaron Rodgers, but, with the uncertainty of him being with Green Bay, if he's going to go host Jeopardy, or if he's going to be with Denver, who knows? They decided to go with somebody else. I agree with you in the fact I do kind of wish it was Derrick Henry or just somebody different, because, you can always put Brady and Mahomes on it.
Yep.
Mahomes is going to be the best quarterback in the league for a decade. Brady, like you said, you can put on a legend edition any single time you want, but the aspect of them putting him on here, I kind of get, because let's say Brady retires after this season. I don't think he will. I honestly it doesn't make much sense, but I can kind of understand why EA would do it, so they can kind of benefit, kind of, this could be Brady's last year, buy this cover with Brady on it type of deal.
Yeah.
But, you also kind of mentioned defensive players. I would really like to see a defensive player, for example, maybe a Mahomes and Aaron Donald, or Brady and Aaron Donald. To me, I think that makes it so much more interesting. Like I mentioned, the last Madden that had two players on it was an offensive defense. The Super Bowl of Fitzgerald and Polamalu. I think Darnold and I don't know. Aaron Donald and either Mahomes or Brady. I would much rather see that than Mahomes and Brady. Realistically, I think it's going to be Mahomes and Brady, but I would much rather see an Aaron Donald and Mahomes or an Aaron Donald and Tom Brady on the cover of Madden 22.
That would be awesome. I would love to see defensive players on as many Madden covers as they can get them on. We saw Richard Sherman was on a cover. I can't really think of too many defensive players been on the cover other than that. That's the most recent one, I think, was Richard Sherman making the cover. And they got guys that they could do it. They could do it with Aaron Donald. They could do it with TJ Watt. I think TJ Watt's getting to a point where he's recognizable enough to put him on there. If Myles Garrett wouldn't have hit someone in the head with a helmet, I could see them doing it with a guy like him too, even.
I don't want to see TJ Watt in the Madden cover.
Yeah, the Bengals fan, you don't want to see it at all, do you? Burrow's probably going to do it one day. If Burrow can keep going up and he can heal up after this injury, you're going to see Burrow on a Madden cover. You're going to see Herbert on a Madden cover. Maybe they'll do a duel with them. That'd be fun.
That would be pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But, it's really interesting to see who will be in the Madden cover of 2022. I think for the most part, I do kind of think it's obvious it's going to be Mahomes and Brady. I would be glad if it's not that, just something different. Not many people expected. But I'd be really interested to see the Madden cover coming out Thursday, and hopefully they can improve their gameplay. Madden has
an outside shot. An outside shot, dude. An outside shot is Brady and Rob Gronkowski, 2 GOATs. It could be that too.
That's very interesting. I mean, that is a possibility. I mean, best quarterback all time, best tight end of all time. I mean, who knows? Both going to be definitely, I mean, obviously Hall of Famers, but hopefully, with the Madden cover, the thing about Madden, they spent too much time on the Madden covers and the soundtrack and stupid crap like that. It's actually on the game. It makes no sense. I mean, Madden Ultimate Team has absolutely sucked the past 3 or 4 years. Franchise mode has went down the hill. I think it might have been the one with Sherman on it. It was either Sherman or Beckham. To me, that was actually the last good Madden game. Ever since then, I mean, it's literally the same exact game. Well, let's buy $60 for a updated roster. You can just update your roster on your PlayStation 5 or whatever. I mean, I hope throughout all this Madden cover topics, they actually improve their game for once and make it not sucky for pretty much.
Yeah, basically my whole life I've been like a huge Madden player, like a daily Madden player. Even when I was stationed overseas and like at sea underway, I had a little TV that I would play Madden on almost every day, running franchises, running my own little like storylines in my own head with my own imagination. But recently, I've actually stopped playing Madden, like completely. I don't play Madden anymore. It's because the game, for one, it just stresses me out and makes me mad because you get 3 tip balls that bounce around and go 20 feet in the air a game. And then also, on top of that, I don't got the time to be sitting around getting pissed off at my TV all the time. So Madden actually lost me. I will buy the new game anyways, just to play it whenever I can or when I want to play or just try it out and see if it's any different. But like you said, they're going to start losing customers like me. I'm about to be 24. Like once we start hitting that 24, 25, 26 and life starts to really begin, like these people are going to start trailing off if they don't improve this game.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, it's like I played Madden, I think yesterday, actually. I was playing Ultimate Team. And it's just crazy, just within the 4 or 5 years, how much Ultimate Team has changed. Because, like, that's the only reason I play Madden.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they gave, I think it was last year, the year before, they give out free players to kind of help your team. They gave me a freaking Juju Smith-Schuster free card. At that standpoint, I mean, I was getting mad. Like, I don't want to play Madden. Madden sucks. And they give me a freaking free Juju Smith card.
Congrats.
I ever hate the most in all sports. They're just kind of basically tempting me at this point. But, yeah, I mean, I would hope it improves. Realistically, it's probably not. It's still going to be the same sucky game that it has been for the past 4 or 5 years. But, the cover, obviously, I would say most likely it's going to be Brady and Mahomes. But hopefully, I just hope it's somebody else. Something a little bit different. So,
yeah. I think if NCAA can get a game back out there, you'll see Madden start to improve because they don't want to lose the money. Right now, they're kind of like king of the world, right? They don't have to, like WWE. They don't got to really do anything crazy. They can just keep bringing in money. But once they get some competition, you'll see them have to start improving stuff, especially, like you said, Ultimate Team and the franchise modes. They've been the same since 2012. There's not been like major additions to the franchise mode. It's ridiculous.
I was telling somebody, I know this might be an unpopular opinion, but before the announcement of NCAA, which one it's going to be, returns in a couple of years, I was telling somebody if NCAA 14 was made on a PS4, PS5, and Xbox, One, just a game that was 2013, 14, like 7 or 8 years ago, I honestly believe NCAA 14 would have more sales than the new Madden game. I know I sound crazy. But NCAA 14, in my opinion, it's definitely one of the best video games of all time. It's better than any Madden game. NCAA 11, 12, 13, 14, any of them is better than any Madden, I would say, except for Madden 11. I believe that's the one with Drew Brees on it. That's definitely my favorite Madden one.
Yeah.
But it's just, kind of the thing with competition. You mentioned, the WWE, AEW is expected to have a video game within a year or so. Maybe that helps WWE. Everybody talks about Madden, having a sucky game. WWE has been the exact same way for the past 5 or 6 years. But it's really interesting. Competition, hopefully it makes the video games better. Who knows? Be really interested to see how the new Madden is. Hopefully, it's not as bad as last year's and the year before and the year before. But, in this episode, we kind of talked about a lot of stuff. Julio Jones being traded to the Tennessee Titans, some recent WWE releases, Brad Stevens being no longer the coach of the Boston Celtics, replacing Danny Ainge as the GM, who should be the new head coach of the Celtics, the NBA playoffs, and who should be the cover athlete of Madden 2022. So, Mike, can you tell some of the listeners who can follow you on social media?
Yeah, man, Mike on the Mike Sports across the board for all my personal stuff. And then go check out the Warzone Sports Network on YouTube. That's kind of the best spot to find us because we got all of our content and all of our shows posted up there every single day. Like, for example, today we're going to have a recap of UFC 263 with Talking Smack with Mac. He's going to have his second episode of Inside the Cage at 2 p.m. And then we're going to have Into the Crosshairs, which has been a hit NBA show with Nick Mack on the channel today. Both those dropping today. So if you guys want to go check that out, really, really would appreciate that. It's right here on the shirt.
I will make sure to put that in the link in the bio. Make sure to go check out, Mike's podcast and also Warzone Sports Network. They have lots of cool stuff. Like I mentioned, really, really cool NFL Draft Club that had a couple months back. Make sure to go follow me, the Sports 200 Show on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video and like this video, really appreciate it. And I'll see you all next time on Sports 200 Show.